Change on the way for Friday evening. Wet and windy weather pushes into Northern Ireland and much of Scotland. Hill snow for a time for central Scotland before milder air sweeps in. Also some flakes of snow over the Pennines, Northern England, West Wales seeing the wet weather turn up by the early hours of Saturday. With the cloud advancing and with the wind picking up, most places are frost-free as we start off the weekend, but 0 degrees possible in East Anglia and the southeast. Then for Saturday, a three-way split. Showers for much of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Blustery conditions here. Wet and windy for Northern England. Much of Wales with some heavy rain, especially over the higher ground. Drier to the south and southeast before it turns wet and windy here during Sunday. But as the wind and rain sweeps through, it also turns milder.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. This is GB News on your telly and on your wireless. It's a big night of breaking news. Cressida Dick, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, in the last hour or so has announced she is stepping down, and we will talk about that and talk about all the other things that are happening around the world tonight. And we also want your thoughts, not just on Dame Cressida, but on anything else that's on your mind. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews. All that's coming up, but first, as always, the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. In the last hour, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Dame Cressida Dick, has resigned. She said undertaking the role as a servant of the people of London had been the greatest honour and privilege of her life, adding, "It's clear that the Mayor of London has no longer sufficient confidence in my leadership to continue." And in a statement, Sadiq Khan said it's clear that the only way to start to deliver the scale of the change required is to have new leadership right at the top of the Metropolitan Police. Former Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Met Police Stephen Roberts told GB News serving the Home Secretary and the London Mayor will always be a difficult dynamic for the Met Commissioner to manage.
Always been a politically difficult job. It's always been a job where sometimes the right decisions will be very unpopular with powerful politicians. But that's part of the role of the police service, and that's why the police service by law has operational independence from politicians.
Well, in reaction, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson also thanked the Met Commissioner for her service. He said, Dame Cressida has served her country with great dedication and distinction over many decades. I thank her for her role protecting the public and making our streets safer. And the Prime Minister has also been in Poland today, and he said the UK won't accept a world in which a powerful country can bully or attack its neighbours. It comes amid continuing fears of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Speaking after the meeting with the Polish Prime Minister, Boris Johnson said Poland is critical to security in Eastern Europe, adding, when Poland is threatened, we're all threatened. Mr Johnson added Russia must understand the consequences of an invasion.
I think everybody should be in no doubt that were Russia to be so foolish to make the catastrophic mistake of invading any part of Ukraine, the Ukrainian army, which themselves number about 200,000, maybe 150,000 in reserve, they will fight. We stand shoulder to shoulder with our allies in Poland, which we always do, but also to show that the West as a whole will strengthen NATO's eastern frontiers rather than the reverse.
Boris Johnson speaking in Poland earlier. Well, the Foreign Secretary, for her part, has challenged her Russian counterpart, who claims the Kremlin isn't threatening any country, despite the build-up of its troops near Ukraine's border. But Liz Truss said in a tweet after the meeting, if Russia is serious about not invading, we need to see troops withdrawing. But the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, retaliated, saying Britain is refusing to listen. News at home, and the Prime Minister says he won't quit if he's fined by police over alleged lockdown-breaking events at Number 10. The former Prime Minister, Sir John Major, has been accusing Boris Johnson today of breaking the law and making brazen excuses. Responding to that criticism, Boris Johnson said it was demonstrably untrue that controversies about parties in Downing Street had damaged the UK's reputation overseas. Buckingham Palace says the Queen is not showing symptoms of COVID-19 despite meeting Prince Charles on Tuesday, who's since tested positive for the virus. The palace hasn't confirmed if Her Majesty has tested positive or negative, citing medical privacy. Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall attended an event at the British Museum yesterday. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now let's get more from Mark Steyn. Mark?
Thank you very much, Polly. I thank Cressida Dick from saving me from having to talk about John Major's alleged savaging of Boris Johnson, because being savaged by John Major is like being tickled by a Weimaraner. But as you just heard from Polly there, a couple of hours after saying she had no intention of stepping down from her post as Commissioner of Police of the Metropolis, that's the official title, Cressida Dick has in fact stepped down. She's going. She said in a statement she had no choice as it became clear the mayor, Sadiq Khan, had no confidence in her leadership. With me now is a man who reached that conclusion long before Sadiq Khan did. Paul Gambaccini was on this show a couple of months back, talking about a terrific career, hadn't put a foot wrong. Radio 1, Radio 2, Radio 3, Radio 4, fabulous career. And then one day he attracted the attention of the Metropolitan Police. Paul, it's great to see you again. You got together with people that we wouldn't normally expect you to be hanging out with, like Leon Britton's family and Edwin Lord Bramall's family and various other persons who'd attracted the attention of Cressida Dick's Metropolitan Police. And as you said to me last time, you were calling on Cressida Dick to step down, and it was at the very moment when, in fact, she was being reappointed to her post until 2024. So you must take some pleasure in her departure.
Hello, Mark. It's a great pleasure to see you again, and tonight is even more of a pleasure than usual. I am reminded of two quotes, one of which you would have heard in school. Mao Zedong, with bogus profundity, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. Well, yeah, but this is the first step on a long journey of clearing out the upper echelons of the corrupt Metropolitan Police. And the other quote is Mott the Hoople's hit single title, Roll Away the Stone. It's time to roll away the stone and shed light on what is inside the cave. All of those secrets that Cressida Dick kept secret for years. The truth of the cover-up of the Stephen Lawrence murder, the truth of the cover-up of the Daniel Morgan axe in the head murder, the full truth of Operation Midland, and so forth. Things we've talked about before. Recently, the public have had even more reason to be irate against this unfortunate woman. And I think we must say that today is not the last step, but the beginning, perhaps, of the restoration of the quality and reputation of the Metropolitan Police. Oh, could it be so?
Well, we always like to have Mott the Hoople quotes. I think the last time I hosted a show in which anyone quoted Mott the Hoople was April 1973, something like that. So thank you for bringing that back, and they make more sense than Chairman Mao ever did. You're right, but at the same time, it's not actually clear to me what's going on here, because Sadiq Khan was saying, I think it was just 72 hours ago, that she had his full confidence, and then he got out of bed the wrong side a couple of mornings ago, and suddenly she was toast. Is this the usual Metropolitan Police thing, that there's some darker mystery going on there?
I share your curiosity. When my husband Christopher showed to me the logo Breaking News without letting me see what the breaking news was, and I guessed a couple of things, and I was not guessing the right things. They were the things that were obvious, that were just in your newscast. And it was only in today's Financial Times that Sadiq Khan is quoted as saying that Cressida Dick has days or weeks. Well, hello, those were pretty fast weeks. So I don't know what's going on there either. I really want to know the full story of this, as well as all the things that Cressida Dick did.
Well, it's an interesting... I mean, he was pretty blunt, actually, when he said thank you and good night in response to her statement. He didn't do any of the usual flowery drivel that even great enemies do. Is it just the fact, I mean, you're part of a huge scandal, and the Met eventually settled with you and gave you some money, as they did with an awful lot of people involved in these investigations that had prima facie no merit whatsoever. So Cressida Dick and other senior officers were just pursuing you because it's easier than doing anything about people being stabbed or grooming gangs or property crime or any of the things that are soaring out of control in their jurisdiction. But is it that in fact she's just presided over a police force that hardly even scratches the surface of London crime these days? I mean, the figures are so bad, it's hard to see why we even bother with a police constabulary.
Well, I don't know why they waste so much money on doing things that are clearly bogus and protecting each other with what I would call, from my New York background, the mafia code of omerta. And
yeah,
I don't know why. Let's think about this for a minute with Sadiq Khan. You raise a very good point. Sadiq Khan has been mayor for years. It's not as if Cressida Dick suddenly turned rotten as like a cabbage. I mean, she was always rotten. What is it in Sadiq Khan's mind that made him think this morning? That's what I would like to know.
Well, the funny thing about it is, I'm glad to see the back of her, because she was useless, and at least in the cases of you and the other people who were sitting in that press conference. I mean, if you want to get really serious about the investigations that you were mixed up with, as you pointed out, Freddie Starr basically just went abroad and died of being investigated. Those investigations that you were part of, they ruined Harvey Proctor. I think is one of the most wronged men in the realm. He wound up living in a garden shed because he was ruined by a totally meritless investigation. And what I found interesting about the rumours circulating tonight is that people are doing the usual political thing. They're saying, well, Sadiq Khan is upset because he thinks Dame Cressida is going to cover for Boris on the birthday cake. So in other words, it's almost instantly gone to the deep conspiratorial theory within an hour of it becoming news. Oh yeah, she's in Boris's pocket over the cake gate, and so Sadiq Khan wants Boris out, so he's got rid of Cressida Dick. I mean, is this what our police have been reduced to?
Well, I'm afraid they've reduced themselves to it by not being open about anything which is important to the public. All of these scandals that the public want to know the answers to, the Met are blocking the answers to. So, of course, people have to reach their own conclusions, some of which are daft, some of which are reasonable. I've told you, I'm heartbroken that the Met failed to investigate the gay serial killings in Barking, two of which occurred while I was on bail, while the police were wasting all of that money. If they had been spending the money on those investigations, a couple of those young men might still be alive. And this is what we're talking about. We want the proper allocation of police resources. We don't want a police force with no resources. We just want the police to use their resources in the right way.
Well, you make a very good point there, because there are people who say, and they will say to you, that the great line that particularly law and order conservatives, who don't seem to realise how far the police have gone in the last few decades, but if you're innocent, you've got nothing to fear, and if they're taking the trouble to investigate you, it just goes to show how thorough they're being. It doesn't work like that. Every hour that they waste on investigating you or Lord Bramall is an hour they're not spending investigating on real crime. And it's the Metropolitan Police embody, more than any other constabulary, the contemporary police's complete inability to prioritise in this day and age.
The son of Lord Bramall told me that when 20 officers flooded his parents' home, and as you know, Lady Bramall was in her final days. She didn't comprehend what was happening. And Lord Bramall was outed to the village because the police retired to the pub in great numbers. So everybody knew that something was up.
Right.
And he said to his son, who told this to me, that yes, he had faced danger on the beaches of Normandy. He had faced danger in the Falklands, but this was the first time that he had felt mortal terror, to have his reputation tarnished by such ludicrous and vile accusations. You know, I was told the day I was arrested, don't worry. If you're innocent, we'll find out. We have 20 officers on your case. Well, that didn't reassure me at all. 20 people trying to prove I'm a perv, And as you say, those 20 people could have been better used looking into some other real crimes. People were being murdered in 2013. There was knife crime in 2014.
Yeah.
Why aren't we spending that money on these real things?
And when they say, oh, we've got 20 people working on your case, then we're into the old Soviet thing of show me the man and I'll show you the crime, because basically you look pathetic if you stick 20 people on a case and you don't go, oh, he seems, we can't find anything on him, Dame Cressida. Should we just keep looking, widen it, put 40 people on the case? I mean, this isn't just a Cressida Dick issue. As you said, there needs to be a huge clear out from the upper ranks of the Metropolitan Police.
Well, we know that many other police forces around the country do not like the Met. They don't want to work with the Met. And the Met have a complete wrong agenda. You know, not only did they have 20 people on my case, they had pairs of officers going at public expense to Los Angeles, Australia, New York, Jersey. I mean, and you're thinking, where did these people stay? It wasn't a hostel, you know. It cost the public something. No, you know, and we know these real crimes have occurred. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But it's more from their point of view. It's more interesting, isn't it? Oh, there's been a stabbing just around the block. I can't deal with that now. I'm off to New York to stay at the Plaza Hotel and investigate Paul Gambaccini for a couple of weeks. It's a joke, this, and it's been and it was a joke from day one. And that's what makes it, and again, it's not really funny. You wrote about it from your point of view, but it's perfectly possible to write about her reign at the Metropolitan Police from the point of view of all the people whose crimes, who rang, you know, the call centre, which is in Rock Hall, and I think they check the message tape once every 2 weeks. All the people who never got their crimes responded to because they're staying at the Plaza Hotel in New York investigating you.
Well, this is true. When I was being interviewed by the police the day I was arrested, I said, well, all of my former lodgers, and I had a girlfriend at the time of this alleged incident, 1978, and I said, they're all still alive, and she's in New York. And one of the officers, and this was Charing Cross Police Station, mind you, said, oh, I'll take that one. And I thought he was joking, but he was not joking. He did go to New York, you know, and
right.
It's true. A former deputy commissioner of the Met said to me, investigations will not terminate until all opportunities for travel have been exhausted. And that proved to be the case.
Yeah, that's... Well, that's great to know, folks. If you're stabbed, don't bother calling them. They'll call you. But the good news is that if Paul Gambaccini's girlfriend from 1978 is now living in Greenwich Village, they'll be on that flight out of Heathrow in nothing flat. Paul, I hope you stay. I hope you stay on this because, as you say, the Met aren't liked by other constabularies. You can go all over the country. You can talk to fellas in Belfast and Manchester and everywhere, and they don't like the Metropolitan Police, and they think there's something wrong with them. So I hope I hope you're gonna stay on that. And congratulations on a belated victory, Paul Gambaccini, sorely traduced. You should read his book, A Year Under the Yew Tree. I read it. I thought I was just going to read it 15 minutes as the plane took off from Heathrow, and then I'd have a nap. And in fact, it engrossed me, and I read it straight through on that 7-hour flight across the Atlantic. It's a great book, Paul, and people should read it to know what's going on in the police. Great to see you again, Paul Gambaccini. We will have more on this story later on. We're going to get to your views in a bit. GBviews at gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. The Canadian trucker convoy has shut down Ottawa for almost a fortnight now, and it's spread to major US border crossings and overseas to New Zealand and to Europe. The French state has watched Jacinda Trudeau dorising about in and out of his groundhog burrow, and they're not impressed in France by the Commonwealth's leading mammy singer Bollywood bridesmaid, so they won't be making his mistakes. If you get caught partaking in the convoy in Paris, The police warn you're liable to the seizing of your vehicle, the suspension of your driving licence for 3 years, a €4,500 fine and 2 years in jail. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, mais pas camione. Zut alors. Joining me now from Paris is Peter Hallen. Peter, the French state does not want what happened in Ottawa happening in Paris. I think it's fair to say that.
Quite right, Mark. It's very keen to stop this convoy arriving. As we speak, there are people setting off from cities and provincial towns all over France and heading up here to Paris, and they're hoping to bring the city to a standstill tomorrow or over the weekend before heading off to Brussels. But, as you say, the police prefect, he has banned this, what do you call it, convoy, of course. I was going to say gathering, because there are also people who want to demonstrate on the street and not in their cars. So it's both sides of it. It's an unauthorized demonstration. How successful are they going to be? Lorries are pretty easy to stop, aren't they, when they come into the town? But people sneak in on all those little Renaults and Citroëns, which people drive here, and then put their flags on later when they get into town. They might avoid the police blockade. But it's going to be a lively day, Mark.
Well, what's odd about this is that basically the French are the masters of truck protests. For as long as either of us can remember, you know, if somebody proposes some change in the common agricultural policy or whatever it is, there are thousands of French trucks blockading and getting away with it, and often very easily forcing the government to back down. This Canadian-style truck convoy seems to be the first truck convoy that the French state has taken against in that way.
Yes, it seems to me that what they're very scared about is another Yellow Vests movement becoming extremely influential and powerful, as it was between about November 2018 and the early 2020s, I would say, just before the pandemic restrictions really kicked in. This movement, as we all remember, brought absolute chaos to central Paris. They were trashing restaurants, they were setting fire to the Arc de Triomphe, they were burning banks, they were fighting with the police. Normally on a Saturday was the big protest day. Of course, if you remember, that all started as fuel protests. This often happens in France. Provincial France is hugely reliant on the internal combustion engine. Parisians are less so. A lot of the Paris establishment do very well walking around the city, perhaps getting on their bicycles or whatever, and they really fear vehicles coming into town full of very angry people. Remember, this isn't just a protest against coronavirus restrictions. It's against the whole Macron administration. And you get the feeling that there is real fear that lots and lots of people will join it, hence them banning it. Because as well as you know as well as I do, Mark, if you ban demonstrations in Paris, they normally happen anyway. And confrontations often far more intense when you ban them. So again, we might see some pretty potentially violent scenes around the city tomorrow.
You mentioned Monsieur Macron. Just broadening out the politics of it, Monsieur Zemmour has given his support to this convoy. Madame Le Pen, I mean, there's a split on the right. The right are competing to come number 2 in the first round of the presidential election and get to go head-to-head with Macron in the final round. And the three challengers on the right are all within a point or two of each other. Zemmour has basically thrown his lot in wholeheartedly with the convoy, while Madame Le Pen is being a little, she's hedging her bets a little bit more. Is that fair to say?
Yes, she's been very political about it all. She's saying that she understands the protesters. She knows what they're all about, but she qualifies that by saying that the way to really protest against the government is at the ballot box. And of course, that would be an encouragement to more moderate voters around the country to back Marine Le Pen this April, rather than taking to the streets tomorrow or getting into their small cars or their rather larger lorries and trying to blockade the capital city. Whereas Eric Zemmour is far more extreme, can we say? And he thinks a bit of robust protest might be a good thing and might put Emmanuel Macron and his forces of law and order in their place. So there's very, very much a split there, Mark.
Yeah, artful straddles, as it were, didn't work out too well for the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition in Ottawa, because he tried to do a Marine Le Pen, liking them a little bit, backing off, not getting too close, and within, I think, of 4 days of the rally beginning in Ottawa, the Canadian Conservative Party had risen up and thrown him out as leader. So Marine Le Pen might be advised to pay a little bit of attention for that. But we will be interested to see what happens. Peter, don't if you're driving by, don't give a honk of support. Because the gendarmerie might club you to the ground like the Ottawa cops did to a 4'10" great grandpa in their zealousness. And in fact, I would say the Paris police are generally more zealous than the Ottawa police have ever been. But thank you, Peter. Great to see you. Coming up, your thoughts on Cressida Dick's resignation and the heroic spread of convoys across the world, plus Matt Ridley on China's gift to the world, and it's not the Olympics. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's get to your comments. Steve on Twitter says she should have resigned ages ago. Shambles. Yes, indeed. If they put her in the House of Lords, that would not be a bad name. Baroness Shambles. Ellison on Twitter says, not really. She's being forced out over a political agenda from Khan. Well, Gambo and I were talking about this, and it is quite... one does get the sense that what we're being told and the emotional, effusive statement that Dame Cressida gave, it is clear that the Mayor no longer has sufficient confidence in my leadership to continue. He has left me no choice but to step aside. The question is, what's going wrong? Because it's nothing to do with the crime, it's nothing to do with the stabbings, it's nothing to do with the terrorism. Sadiq Khan was the one who assured us that's all part of life in a great world city. It's what adds to its vibrancy and diversity, is going to a fancy restaurant, might be a Slovenian restaurant, might be a Tuvaluan restaurant, and then getting stabbed as you're strolling home on the evening of Valentine's Day. To Sadiq Khan, that's the vibrant diversity of living in a great world city. So that doesn't bother, the crime doesn't bother him. So what is it? What is it? Sue from Twitter says they need somebody strong who will lead and support the frontline officers. Khan needs to go too. The frontline officers, I don't know. They've spent 2 years just strolling through the park, 2 by 2, chastising a little old lady who's been sitting on the park bench for her agreed half-hour exercise each day. They've spent the last couple of years berating her for staying on the park bench 22 minutes too long, or asking a guy which Costa did he get his decaf macchiato at, because if it was a Costa too far from his home rather than the nearest one, because he went to the one slightly further away because he happens to like the fetching young Polish lady barista behind the counter, then they'll pull him in for questioning. So good luck finding anything recognisable as what would be a frontline officer in Sir Robert Peel's day. Craig says, yes, but not because of the reasons Khan says, and not because Khan has no confidence in her. She should go because of the appalling crime rates in London, the poor investigations and failure of leadership. But as crime is Khan's ultimate responsibility, he should also resign. It's all a bit nebulous, this, because in fact it's the Queen, on the advice of the Home Secretary, who appoints the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, who serves at Her Majesty's pleasure, although in recent decades it's traditionally been understood to be a 5-year term, which was extended in Dame Cressida's case just a couple of months back, so to give her an extra 2 years in the job. But since the creation of the post of Mayor of London 20 years ago, basically, as a practical matter, if the police commissioner doesn't hold the confidence of the Mayor of London, it doesn't really matter if the Home Secretary still likes the commissioner. That commissioner has got to go. And Mildred says, Cressida needed to go. Hurrah! Hurrah! Huzzahs and hurrahs, I think, are in order here, Mildred. Cressida needed to go, hurrah, but who will we get instead of her? The point to remember is that she was an affirmative action appointment. She will go down in history as the first woman to lead the Met. And then she came out as a lesbian, I think, more or less the day she took up the appointment. So she's it's an identity politics appointment. And if you get rid of your identity politics appointment because she's not very good, it makes it a little bit difficult if you then have to go back to some boring straight white male. So I think there may well be a little bit of identity politics consideration going on in her appointment. Keep your tweets and emails coming. Stump the Steyn will be on deck imminently in the COVID era, which we're now in the third year of. The COVID era is really a malign alliance between government, big pharma and media. And in the COVID era, last year's conspiracy theory is today's most plausible explanation. Do you remember the first couple of years? Everyone assured us the COVID had jumped the evolutionary chain from animals to humans. Bats, sure. Pangolins, great. Let's go to our chief pangolin correspondent as China prepares to usher in the year of the pangolin. It was pangolin, pangolin, pangolin for months on end. But suggesting that this thing looks more likely to have come from a lab and you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, nobody's talking about pangolins anymore. But Luc Montagnier, the French virologist who discovered HIV, died on Tuesday. So the lads at Wikipedia are busy rewriting his entry, but they're not rewriting that second paragraph. Quote, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Montagnier promoted the conspiracy theory that SARS-CoV-2, the causative virus, was deliberately created and escaped from a laboratory. Such a claim has been refuted by other virologists. He has been criticised by other academics for using his Nobel Prize status to spread dangerous health messages outside his field of knowledge. Oh my. Well, it's been a long time since anyone's been talking about pangolins, and in the latest update, scientists in Hungary have uncovered evidence suggesting Chinese scientists studying a coronavirus were monkeying around with green monkey DNA. You may have seen this plot twist in Rise of the Planet of the Apes a couple of years ago, as well as the DNA of Chinese hamsters to make the virus more lethal. I believe Rise of the Planet of the Chinese Hamsters is still in development at Paramount. Matt Ridley is co-author of the most exhaustive treatment of the subject, the book Viral, The Search for the Origin of COVID-19, and he's been on this show before and told us that it's highly unusual not to have nailed down the origins of a global pandemic 2 years into it, but our politicians and public health experts seem remarkably uninterested in the subject. Matt, I get the feeling, just from reading this Hungarian story, where everything sounds vaguely familiar and yet it's also a new addition to what we know, that there's a lot more of this gain of function going on than we ever knew about before, and that it's kind of wiggled free of the accountable politicians whom one might expect ultimately to be in charge of it.
Well, I agree with you there. I've been following genomics and biology obviously very closely for many years, and I was surprised myself to discover the kind of experiments the virologists have been doing with swapping the genes of viruses, deliberately making them more infectious in the lab so that they're easier to grow in cells. And this is, by the way, the key to the Hungarian story. It's not that they've been fiddling with the DNA of monkeys or hamsters. It's that they've been using cell culture to grow viruses in the lab. Nothing wrong with that. It's a standard technique. The culture you usually use is either a thing called a Vero E6 cell, which originated from African green monkeys, or a Chinese hamster cell, or sometimes a mixture of the two. What's interesting here is that in a sample of soil from Antarctica that was sampled for genome, for genomes of organisms, there popped up SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes the pandemic, and a very early ancestral version of it. Now, this isn't to say that it was sitting in Antarctica. What's happened here is a contamination in the machine that did the sequencing in Shanghai, but we don't quite know when that happened. If it happened in January 2020, which is possible, then it's probably not very interesting. But if it happened in December 2019, before we even knew about the pandemic, then it's very interesting. And what the two Hungarian scientists say is that finding the African green monkey cells and the Chinese hamster cells in the sample suggests that whoever was testing for this virus was testing a laboratory research sample, not a patient sample from a hospital. So it doesn't look like an early case, it looks like something out of a lab. But it's far too early to be absolutely sure, because as I say, we might find that this was in January and it was related to an early case or something like that. It's just, the Hungarian scientists raised the point themselves. They said this looks like it's come out of a research experiment.
Do you know yet why it is that on the Western end of things, particularly with the Americans, why they would be so eager to do gain-of-function research in this particular field, in China. I mean, I know China is where coronaviruses come from, but they come along, they're like the number 22 bus. You wait a while and there hasn't been one, but then 12 show up all at once. So why are the actual coronaviruses not sufficient for them that the Americans would want to be doing gain-of-function research?
Well, it's quite interesting that SARS-like viruses can't be found in the Americas. They're only in horseshoe bats. Horseshoe bats don't live in the Americas. So the place you have to go to study the SARS-like viruses in particular is China and Southeast Asia, but Africa would do as well. And so the American coronavirus experts were reliant on the Chinese to sort of send them information about the genomes they were finding at one point. And they then, through the EcoHealth Alliance, which is a private foundation, the American government funded research projects in China itself. It's pretty odd, this, because they didn't get any ownership of the results. They don't have the right to see the genomes of the viruses that were found, which is truly remarkable.
No.
If you're paying for the research, you should be able to see the results. But they're secret possession of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Wuhan was the center of this stuff. I mean, Wuhan was by far the biggest research center for SARS-like coronaviruses in the world, not just in China. So it's a bit like, that old line from Casablanca, of all the gin joints in all the world, in all the towns in all the world, she walks in a mine.
Yeah, that is the gin joint for this topic. This isn't really your bag, and we may be going further afield than you care to go, Matt, but the guy who was deputy to Peter Daszak, who's an Englishman, I believe, who runs the EcoHealth Alliance, claims that Mr. Daszak told him that the whole company, which had great ups and downs, it had grants, and then the grant money would run out and it would lay people off, and then they'd get another grant and they'd be hiring again. This guy who was deputy claims the whole thing is just a CIA front operation. It's getting money from USAID, which is well known as a source of CIA funding. Do you subscribe to that, or is that just too mind-blowingly dark to contemplate?
I tend to prefer cock-up theories to conspiracy theories, Mark. I think it's possible, but highly unlikely. Peter Daszak is very entrepreneurial. He's built this EcoHealth Alliance into a enormous financial behemoth, and he's earning himself $400,000 a year distributing funds for research on these viruses all over the world and making friends with Chinese scientists, among others. But he really hasn't been forthcoming with us about what he's up to and what he's been spending the money on. So just to give you an example, I've been trying to get answers out of him for 2 years. In an article published in MIT Technology Review yesterday, he complains to the author that nobody gives him a chance to respond to allegations. I sent him 2 pages of details on what we were going to say about him in our book and gave him a month to respond, and he didn't respond at all. So, there is a real double standard here. On the one hand, they complain they're victims of people being rude about them. On the other hand, they just won't give us the information we ask for. And it's fine, we've had stuff leaked from the EcoHealth Alliance that turns out to be really interesting and important and wasn't volunteered by them. I've caught them out completely lying about whether they sent viruses from Laos to Wuhan. They said they hadn't. I showed them an entry in a database showing that they had. They shut up at that point. So it's an organization that is behaving as if it's part of the Chinese state, whereas actually it's an American private foundation with money from the American taxpayer.
Yeah, and just quickly here, Matt, because you mentioned there's a relationship that he has with very eminent peer-reviewed journals where he's able to get things published in a hurry. Peer review seems to impress a lot of the rubes around the planet. I don't really know why, because one of the things we should have learned from Wuhan is that Chinese money and people who believe as if they're agents of the Chinese state have managed to actually corrupt a lot of the process of peer review at some of the most eminent journals in North America and in Europe.
Well, a lot of the journals are very dependent on on Chinese funding, and a lot of them have done a deal whereby if they get funded up front from the Chinese state, then the fees for publishing in the journal don't have to be paid by the individual researchers, which kind of gives them a free pass to get into the journals, interestingly. But worse than that, what we're finding is that any article saying it couldn't possibly have come out of a lab was rushed through peer review in a matter of days.
Yep.
Whereas any article like some by my co-author Alina Chan saying, hang on, there's a problem with the pangolins or something like that, gets mired in endless peer review that takes months and months and months. So there's a real gatekeeping issue in the scientific journals.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that in other areas too, as you know, Matt, with climate science and other things. Thank you for that. And as I said, Matt is the co-author of the definitive book on this subject. Coming up, we're just going to go back and update you about Cressida Dick and her resignation a little more than an hour ago from the Metropolitan Police. What does it mean for police and policing? That's coming up straight ahead on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Cressida Dick announced her resignation from the Metropolitan Police a little over an hour ago. We were speaking about it earlier with Paul Gambaccini, who had the misfortune to attract the attention of her constabulary. I'm joined now by Chris Phillips, who's former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office and a former detective chief inspector of the Met. Chris, what's your general take on Cressida Dick's tenure at the Met?
Well, I think she stepped into a role that no one really wanted. The Met had been absolutely decimated by political cuts, by financial cuts, and she had to try to rebuild the mess that had been made before her. And she's been gainfully trying to do that. She came out of retirement from policing, of course, to do that. And she's been a police officer for many, many years. And I think it was a massive task for her to try and deal with the issues that had been dealt her, or dealt the police force, in the months and years before.
Well, it's a difficult job. I don't think anybody disagrees about that. And you have to go back a long way to find a commissioner who's managed to end his time with the Met. You probably have to go back to Sir Robert Mark, I think, to find someone who ended his time at the Met as an unalloyed hero, as it were. But a lot of the problems she got into were very foolish ones. I mean, she's not to blame for Sarah Everard being murdered by one of her officers. But, for example, then to have her officers arresting, somewhat roughly, attendees at a vigil for Sarah Everard, I mean, that's just a public relations disaster. That is the sort of thing that the commissioner should have her eye on, isn't it?
Well, yes, but let's put it this way. It kind of depends how you report these things. And what happened at that vigil could be seen in a number of different ways. And certainly the vigil took place, and then some demonstrations happened afterwards. But of course, I think the media have a great deal to play in this, in the way she's been treated, and they decide the tone of the reporting. And yes, there have been mistakes made. Listen, policing is an inexact science. There's lots of individuals within the police that will have made mistakes. And of course, she has to stand up and try to explain how they happened. And that's never going to be an easy task.
Isn't one of the things that's changed, though, the fact that so much crime goes unattended? That's to say, you call someone up and say, well, last night some guy broke into my garage and stole this, that and the other. And they're not interested, and you're not going to hear, you can report it, but nothing's going to be done about it. So that from the media's point of view, and I don't necessarily disagree with what you were saying about that, but the media know that the police are unpopular now in a way they weren't a couple of generations ago, and that in that sense, you can go after them with impunity, more or less.
Yeah, well, let's be quite frank here. You know, she took over a police force that had been decimated. Theresa May, in a fit of pique, decided to devastate policing, and it worked. What she did worked. She was told at the time when she decided to put these cuts on policing that they would have massive consequences. And those consequences have been playing out now for the last 5 years. What we've seen is insufficient police officers, untrained police officers, young police officers because people were retiring at a rate of knots because they didn't want to be in the police force, police stations closing. I mean, can you remember ever anyone asking to take away community policing? But that's what's been done by decisions at governmental level.
Well, the early retirement thing, I think, is an issue. I was staggered. I just happened to cross my eye a couple of months back in connection with nothing in particular. How few officers there are over the age of, I think it's 54. So that in tricky situations where you might appreciate the calm, balanced, judicious view of a man in late middle age, there aren't any in the force.
No, absolutely. And that there's a reason behind that, because policing has been under severe criticism for some time, but also the wages and the pensions have been attacked mercilessly by, well, it was David Cameron, Theresa May, and those around her. And because of that, you've had many experienced police officers, great police officers, have left the police and gone on to different jobs. half the train drivers now in London are retired police officers, for goodness sake.
That's an extraordinary statement. We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us. And this story is going to rumble on through the night and through tomorrow. We're not going to. I don't think we're going to have time to do the old Steyn stumping tonight. But that is it. Alistair Stewart takes the 8 o'clock hour tomorrow night, and you won't want to miss Alistair because he's terrific. But never fear, Dan Wootton has a thumping Thursday just for you for the next 2 hours. Cressida Dick and a lot more besides. Stay safe, stay free.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon. Clear and frosty overnight for most of us, but if you can bear the chill, first thing Friday, a sunny sunrise to look forward to, and then a fine Friday for the vast majority. We've seen low pressure bring strong winds and showers to the northern half of the UK during Thursday. That's now moving into the North Sea, but still, tides or isobars along the North Sea coast will lead to blustery conditions for the North Sea coast overnight. Perhaps even some local gales in exposed locations. But away from that, clear skies for the vast majority, some cloud and showers continuing in western parts, but otherwise under clear skies with light winds, temperatures dipping to 0 to -3 in many places, as low as -5 to -10 for some sheltered parts of snow-covered Scotland. Into the start of Friday then, beautiful sunny skies first thing, and despite the chill, well, temperatures will be rising through the morning, and actually eastern parts of England keep the sunshine well into the afternoon. Cloudier skies turning up elsewhere, 1 or 2 showers for northern England, southern Scotland, and temperatures rising to 7 to 9 Celsius up